WFYI podcast brought to you by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering food and drink, college sports, outdoor activities, live music, cool art, and good times daily. Everyone is welcome in Bloomington. More information at visitbloomington.com.
This is WFYI News Now. It's April 25th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, more details coming out about the alleged abuse at George Washington Carver School 87. Activists renew their call for Purdue University to commit to a climate action plan. And researchers at Purdue are working to create a highway that charges electric vehicles as they pass over it. We'll find out what it would take to make it happen.
You're talking about on average, 200 kilowatts. And to put that into perspective, that's on the scale of about 100 homes.
Those stories coming up. But first, a new study examines Gen Z's perceptions of Indianapolis. WFYI's Jill Sheridan reports the data highlights where the city is doing well and where it could do better.
People in their 20s, both locally and nationally, were asked to score Indianapolis on factors including safety, jobs, music scene, and overall vibes. Respondents said safety and cost of living were of top importance. Director of the IU Indianapolis Sports Innovation Institute and Department Chair David Pierce says the findings can help direct where efforts are best spent.
We have a lot of individual factors that score well, from the outdoor spaces and the sports scene and nightlife and culture and fairs and festivals. But maybe what is missing is how does all of that come together to create the overall vibe?
Indianapolis's food scene scored low, but survey respondents scored job opportunities higher than expected. Indianapolis ranked third as a city people would want to relocate to behind Chicago and Nashville. I'm Jill Sheridan.
More details are coming out about the alleged abuse at George Washington Carver School 87. Law enforcement agencies weren't informed by either the Department of Child Services or the Indianapolis Public Schools that a teacher had filmed and encouraged the abuse of a 7-year-old with disabilities. WFYI's Lee Gaines has more.
Spokespeople for both the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department and the Marion County Prosecutor's Office say they were not told by IPS or DCS about a video that shows the brutal beating of a second-grade boy by his classmate. The video was filmed by their teacher, Julius Jonikin, who is heard encouraging the abuse. IMPD is now investigating the incident. Yadira Torres-Gomez is a parent of 2 School 87 students. She says she and other parents learned about the video in media reports.
I was crying. It was terrible. More because my daughter is in special needs, and it hit my core.
Torres-Gomez says IPS should have told families and police about the video and the abuse allegations. I'm Lee Gaines.
A spokesperson for IPS did not provide answers to questions. Purdue students and faculty are renewing their call for the university to commit to an official climate action plan. Activists say the school lags behind other universities by not having a concrete plan to decarbonize. Last year, a group of Purdue students and faculty came together to urge the university to commit to a zero-emissions climate plan. Purdue professor Michael Johnston says many other peer institutions have announced timelines for hitting carbon neutrality.
So I think that says a lot about where the kind of university-supported initiatives around decarbonization are at Purdue. We're behind our peers.
When reached out for comment, a Purdue spokesperson forwarded the school's 2020 sustainability plan and pointed out that the school last year won a sustainability award from the Department of Education for reducing water use and planting trees. The school's sustainability plan does not include steps to reach carbon neutrality. And for our final story today, electric vehicles have long faced a question around adoption. Where will drivers stop for the next charge? As WFYI's Ben Thorpe reports, researchers at Purdue University have teamed up with the Indiana Department of Transportation to create a highway that could charge electric vehicles as they pass over it, removing any need to stop.
Steve Pekarik, a lead researcher at Purdue, understands that his vision is a grand one. Highways that can charge cars, particularly semi-trucks, so that they'd never need to leave the roadway to stop for fuel.
If you can have ubiquitous charging, you really reduce the cost of electric vehicles because you reduce the battery size, you reduce the range anxiety, so people are more, the adoption rate will likely increase. That's kind of an overall vision. And
in the laboratory, they have constructed a way to remotely charge vehicles as they pass over a stretch of highway. On a long table, Pekarik reveals a series of coils looped together. Above them, in what would be the bottom of a truck, another set of coils are similarly looped together. Pekarik says the receiver underneath the vehicle would charge not unlike a powerful wireless phone charger.
If you're talking about how much power is required for a heavy-duty vehicle as it's moving down the roadway at 65 miles an hour, you're talking about, on the order, on average, 200 kilowatts. And to put that into perspective, that's on the scale of about 100 homes.
Critics of the pilot project and other similar pilots argue that adoption of the technology will be a massive undertaking, requiring cars to be redesigned and large infrastructure investments to be made across states. Pekarik and his team say that's why they are targeting semi-trucks for the technology, arguing that truck fleets will make buy-in easier than for individual personal cars.
Envision that you're going from Indianapolis to Columbus, Ohio. That's a large freight traffic roadway, Interstate 70. So you have to have buy-in on Indiana side of the line, but you also have to have buy-in in Ohio.
Less than 3 miles down the road, along a stretch of State Road 231, just outside of West Lafayette, Indiana, construction workers are cutting 85 4-by-12-foot rectangles in the concrete as cars roll by. Those rectangles will eventually be filled with a series of coils and charged by a generator next to the quarter-mile stretch of road, putting ideas from the lab into practice. Blake Dollier is the Public Relations Director for the Indiana Department of Transportation West Central District. He says he hopes the pilot program can lead to a broader adoption of the technology.
Being able to have this go well enough here that we use it in other places, that's something that we're, really hoping we're able to see.
When this stretch of roadway starts testing, it will look at things like road wear and tear and the effectiveness of the system during different kinds of weather. Jason Hofsetz pulls his car into a charging station outside of the Fort Bend Public Library in Indianapolis. He's been using electric vehicles for roughly a decade and says range anxiety hasn't really been a concern. He's put in the miles.
And so I drove a non-Tesla from west to east coast, but it did take some planning for sure. But every year that planning becomes less and less.
Hofsetz likes the idea of what Purdue is doing, but is skeptical about the investment.
It'll take a long time to get us to that point, just because I don't trust our usual roads as it is right now. And I say that having blown a tire out just last month on a pothole. So.
With construction underway, Purdue researchers are set to begin testing their strip of roadway sometime early next year. I'm Ben Thorpe.
That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by the following people who live in your community: Drew Daudelin, Kendall Antron, who composed the music for this podcast, and me, Abriana Herron. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.